We speak our truths, we shout it out loud, yeah. We speak our truths, we shout it out loud, yeah. We speak our truths, we shout it out loud. Memeza.
Everyone is selling cotton sin. Everyone is moving for a bill. Money, money like the closing deals. People living all afraid to feel. People moving all afraid to chill. Homies getting broke, chasing things. Busy selling souls to buy a dream. And another dream, and another dream, and another thing. And another dream, and another dream, and another dream, and another thing. Homes are empty, fathers are missing. Life is tricky, mama, let me sing. Leaders are lying, truth is missing. Life is fakely and I kept on living. Lately, West sister back in the bees, railing against everything and everyone that isn't the white color they like. Witch hunts, asylum again. Police deaths, public trials, kangaroo courts, social media, loneliness and alienation. Pointless wars, terrorism, killing fields. People dying for no fucking reason. 24-hour news cycles. Next story, please. Immigration, refugees, people moving, searching for home, murdered at home, headed abroad, rich people, 1%ing, multiple homes in different places, different nations, poor people can't even move, it's money over everything. All you others are pieces of shit, fighting for handouts and places to live in. There's no home for you, there's no home for you, there's no home for you, there's no home for you. Stuck in prisons or in ghettos or favelas, social housing or other places where even dogs can barely live in.
Welcome to Verse Connoisseur, a taste of poetic delight. In the studio today we have Hillary Ken Witsani. He is an alt folk musician and a punk poet. He has a critically acclaimed album, File 51, out. It was released in June 2018, that looks at issues of home immigrants and broken homes. And he's currently working on a project called Sons of Fela. He's the previous winner of Mlomo Wako Poetry Slam. He's part of a NAMA-nominated literary project called As the Wind Blows. And he's one of only a handful of musicians on the continent to be covered by Afropunk. Welcome, Hillary.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, man. So, can you tell us about the process of making the album and that you did? Like, what was it like, and what was like the main inspiration that drove you to make it?
I think it changed as time went on when we were working on the album. But at the beginning, I think this project started in 2015. That was conceived by me, Luck, Itonga, and some other two guys. But initially, it was sparked by a few incidents. That one of the ladies who raised me hung herself, right? So committed suicide. And then an uncle of mine was shot in Joburg in broad daylight in a mall. So his pictures were all over social media and everything. So it started from that point, but then later on it veered into something else, just to look at the consequences that really our society is letting slide by. And we have people, these Marvin people, like working in SA all their lives, and then their kids are growing up here, fatherless, motherless, and being raised by grandmothers and stuff. See? So I think it developed into that later on. But the beginning was those two incidents.
Joe, that's pretty hectic. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a bit about Sons of Fela?
Sons of Fela. Now, what is happening right now in the continent? I think we've been too westernized, and I'm not saying that as in to really denigrate anyone. Mm-hmm. It's a fact. I said no one can escape Western influence. That all of us neck deep into it. So it's coming out as a an answer to all the westernization that has been dumped on us. That a lot of the times, what has happened is that we've moved away from certain things that are good. I'm not saying we're supposed to keep everything that used to happen in early African societies. We take what is good, but then we leave other issues as well and stuff. But I'm saying in that project, as Africans, it's not out yet, but that's the thrust of it. That as Africans, there are certain things that we need to hold on to. But we have a lot of things that are going on for us. For example, our religious spirituality. Right. My problem basically is that I'm not anti any religion or something like that, but I find it a problem, right? When you do not really acknowledge where you come from, right? And the face identifier of a human being, I think, is religion, right? And if that is identifier, then I think sort of like as in the whole of the population of Africa is really lost, and we don't know who's us. Our generation, we didn't start that. I think our parents, our grandparents lost the way. But they took everything from those guys and then dumped all of our culture on the sidelines. So on this project, basically, it's not like I'm going back to traditional ways, but there are certain issues that I'm raising that I think need to be said in this context, where African people are now getting interested in their traditions, slowly moving away from maybe what might be the norm in England, in a sense, trying to search for the true Africa.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure, because I kind of like really get what you're saying, because I also at times feel like we're still suffering results of colonization.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I kind of like really connect with what you're saying.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, I think there's a perception that if you're not Christian, then you're anti-Christian. Yes, and I think that one need to be laid to rest. I faced it myself. Yes, and so people tend to take whatever it is that they want to take out of what you say or what other people say. But I'm saying as such, there's a way for us as Africans to be able to worship God, that whether you're worshiping Him through being a Christian or Muslim or whatever it is you're having that you're coming from, right? But what I've been saying all along is that there's a certain bad element, or rather a bad section in the Christian community that says, if you're African, once you're baptized or born again, then you're not touching anything that reminds you of your African culture. Sort of like you have moved off African ways while still being in the continent. And
I do have a question for you, though, but if we're going to talk about like religion, do you feel like as Africans we have our own religion, a specific religion that applies to us, not in the sense of like Christianity or Muslims, because I hear you're mentioning those, and those are, perceived to be westernized things that were brought to Africa. So how do you feel about us as Africans? Do we have our own religion?
We do have. Christianity came recently. That unless, of course, if you're talking about Ethiopia and those other areas near Middle East. But to a lot of us, like the hinterlands of the African continent, Christianity is a new religion to us. So before that, there were some ways that we used to follow. They are not as streamlined or as specific as Christianity is to say, okay, the focal point of Christianity is Jesus Christ and everything. In African culture, each person sort of like each family has their own way of talking to God. It's a way of saying you cannot boldly religion to say, okay, if you're from 300 kilometers away, you're supposed to worship like me. I said of different experiences. And the experience go differently. You worship Him in whatever experience that you are getting through to Him. You see, so I think there's African spirituality. We're just running away from it, and the people that are supposed to teach us those ways are passing away at this point. And those were the first Africans to convert into Christianity. So we might want to go back to learning about African spirituality, but my grandmother is dead. So I'm taking I'm just holding on to some sections that I still remember, but a lot of them I don't. She died with them, but a lot of our grandmothers are dying right now, and they do not want to talk about those issues. So I think this generation, if you're interested in going back to African ways, we have to search for those ways ourselves and infuse it with whatever is current at this point. It's no longer any.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I feel like this episode has got a somber atmosphere because we are looking at the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence against women. And I feel your work particularly, I feel like you talk a lot about injustice. You talk a lot about, you're sort of like an advocate for that kind of thing. So I wanted you to share more with us about the project that you're working on now, As the Wind Blows.
Okay. As the Wind Blows came out some time back. It was a project done by a Bremen fellow at Oliver Nyambi and a Stellenbosch fellow as well at Tendai Mangena. Right. It was in conjunction with Makerere University and Grace Mbappe University in Mosingo. So in that project, it was a way of putting together ideas from imaging these mapping voices. But it didn't really zoom in any particular issue, but there were certain issues that we looked at. Obvious politics, if you're in Zimbabwe, you cannot escape that. And still, since that project is a bit earlier back, so there were still some issues to do with HIV and AIDS. Right, and the direction that our generation is going, in a way. We're not offering any answers, but we're just raising questions here and there. And the project ended up being nominated for INAMA, and it's a prescribed test at universities at this point, I think. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow, really dope.
Yeah. So, Hillary, I also wanted to ask you basically how you feel about activism in Zimbabwe. Like, at the moment, there's been a lot of things that have been happening, if you look at social media and whatnot. But one thing that is very dominant, yes, I would say, is that Zimbabweans have a tendency to talk about issues that are not in the country. Yeah. They prefer to, latch on to other movements and other discussions that are being done. How do you feel poetry and music can really be a way for us to branch out and actually join movements like that here in Zimbabwe?
Thank you for that question. I think music or any art discipline, I think if Hank it right, anyway, art was originally a way to disseminate certain messages. And it's not really different from what I'm doing right now. But it's difficult in this age, though, if your work seems to carry some serious contents. People just want to have fun, people want light content. But music and poetry still remain some of the best ways for people to say things about what is happening in society. That, as you said, especially looking at a lot of things that happen to the more than half of the population of the world that are female. That I think we can say that your ideas, you can let them better in a more considered art form than maybe probably in a careless tweet that you can just send out and then put a hashtag to it, right? Of which is good, but of course those are the instruments they say. But I think at this particular point in Zim, I don't think we are using them right. It just becomes a hashtag for a day or two, and then it's forgotten. But the issues are still alive.
Still remain.
I think we have to be more effective at using social media to make sure that we keep on hammering the same points relentlessly until something is done. I think that's the whole point of activism. You want to keep on talking about the issue until there's a reaction to that issue. Whether it's the change of laws or society sort of like changing its ways to realize that what we've been doing, for example, tell our brothers that you're not supposed to lay a hand on anyone. You see, it's something like that. It's not something that someone can just learn in a Twitter trend in a day. It helps, but I think it goes back to families, the way that we're raised. If we want to address those issues, just talk to the fathers and mothers that they to raise better kids.
True.
And
it shouldn't just only be on Twitter. We
Yeah.
should just go out and be there and making sure that, because I feel like sometimes we have a dependency of just using social media. Like we have this mentality, if I just tweeted about it, then I've done something, but it's not enough.
Seems like the guilt is
true.
off. You feel like you've done your part. But I think it's a start. You're saying, okay, I've seen this issue that is trending. What am I going to do about it? You go back and you raise your kid right.
Yeah, true.
And then if we're going to see the results in 20 years' time, then let's see those results. Let's see those results. At this point, the way we're raised, I think there's a lot of poison among the living. But I think the generation that is supposed to be doing better than us is a coming one. Probably in 20 years' time, we might start seeing results. Those that are grown like us, if you have a conscience, right, you might sit back and see this thing is not right. You have to stop it. But for those that are far gone, now it's beyond help. You have to go back to the families and start afresh, I think.
But I just wonder how, because I'm really emotional about this whole thing of activism. Like, I feel like we're not gaining traction in terms of real issues in Zimbabwe. I feel like things are just swept under the rug. Like, we talk about it, oh, yes, the economy is bad. And then, 3 days from now, you're the same person who's like, adjusted to the pricing and you've now adapted to the situation. You've basically you've accepted it, that it is what it is, and you move on with your life and nothing changes. Like, how do we gain traction as Zimbabweans, as activists, as people who can make actual changes? And how do we get people to be on board?
That one is a very difficult question. I think for a long time, we've allowed things to happen on us. And we are not proactive at all. You look at a South African society that where kids get politicized from primary level. And you look at the history of Julius Malema. That guy was part of a student movement while he was still in primary. And people at 12 or 13, they already know about politics. You look back in our fathers' generations, back in the 60s, right, those people that fought for the liberation of this country, those guys were taken from secondary schools. They were 13, 14, 15. I said, at this point for us, the generation that came after that liberation struggle was over, I don't think we really got to know the importance of really standing up for
what you believe
for what you believe in. At this point, things are very difficult in Zimbabwe, but you don't really get to see anyone doing anything. It's like people just are resigned to certain things happening and hoping that somehow if you wake up tomorrow, then something would have gone away. Instead of taking it in your hands and getting another person and another person until something happens.
Yeah. I think maybe it's being born into freedom and not having to fight for something that's making us lazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at this point, there's I think there's a bit of a difference, but not much of a difference. Back then, sort of like you conscientize people and then you point at the enemy. You say, okay, the white person is not the enemy, but the system that allows him to rule over us is. So let's go and fight for the end of this system. Right. But in Zim at this point, though, it's really difficult to point out what it is. So people don't take matters into their hands. They keep quiet.
Sure.
For whatever
That is
reason
so
that they
true.
keep quiet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Hillary, now we'd really like you to share another piece of your work with us before we close off.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm going to do that. It's a small piece. It's not exactly poetry per se, but it's more like poetry in the African tradition, where it's more like it's turned into a short lament. It's more like the emotions in the words and the repetitiveness of the words in question. Okay, here it goes. My people are down in the dirt and the pain. It's deeper than taking a walk in the rain. My people are down in the dirt and the pain. It's deeper than taking a walk in the rain. Male figures prowling again and again. Mothers and daughters inherit the pain. Male figures prowling again and again. Mothers and daughters inherit the pain. Sins of the fathers still knocking the same. Brothers and cycles of violence and shame. Sins of the fathers still knocking the same. Brothers and cycles of violence and shame. My people are down in the dirt and the pain. It's deeper than taking a walk in the rain. Male figures prowling again and again. Mothers and daughters inherit the pain. Male figures prowling again and again. Mothers and daughters inherit the pain. Sins of the fathers still knocking the same. Brothers and cycles of violence and shame.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hillary, for coming through and sharing this with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah. So till next time, folks. Peace out.
Bye.
We speak our truth, we shout it out loud. We speak our truth, we shout it out loud. Yeah. Long as I live, they gon' hear my voice. Long as I live, they gon' hear my voice. Memes are with a place to be.